ferries with water all around it. So how am I going to get my car across the water onto the island?
That's right. I'm going on a ferry.
But how do all the vehicles get onto the ferry? And how do they all fit inside? Do you know how a car ferry works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Car ferry.
To find out how a car ferry works, I've come here to a port.
A port is where ferries and ships go to load and unload things. And ferries can carry people and cars across the water safely. You should never play in a port or near water, but I've got special permission to be here so I can show you how a car ferry works. The ferry can carry lots of vehicles across the water, and here they all are, waiting to go on the ferry in queues. There's big vehicles like this lorry. We call lorries like this large freight. And there's small vehicles like my little red car.
But how do all these vehicles get onto the ferry?
They drive under this gate.
Thank you.
And across this long platform called the link span.
But the link span ends here and the ferry is over there. So how are the cars going to drive across this big gap? The front of the ferry is called the prow, and it's coming all the way down to rest on top of the link span. It's made a little bridge, so now the vehicles can drive off the ferry into the port. This is Kevin, and Kevin is the loading officer. It's his job to get all the cars, vans, coaches and lorries onto the ferry in the right order. And he works together in a team with the deck officer.
The loading officer works on land, and the deck officer works on the ferry. And they talk to each other using walkie-talkies.
But to find out how the loading officer and the deck officer work together to make sure all the vehicles get onto the ferry safely, I think we need to take a closer look.
When the ferry is ready, the deck officer asks the loading officer for some vehicles, like 6 small cars. The loading officer signals to the cars to drive across the link span. And the deck officer signals to tell the cars which way to drive onto the ferry. Inside the ferry, the cars park onto a floor called the garage deck, which is fixed to hydraulic rams. When the garage deck is full, oil flows into the hydraulic rams and the garage deck moves upwards. This makes space for more vehicles to drive underneath. The deck officer asks the loading officer for more vehicles. This happens until the ferry is full. And when the ferry is full, it raises its prow, ready to set sail.
So you can see what happens when I drive my car onto the ferry. I've got some special cameras.
I'm attaching one onto the roof and one onto the door, so you can see what I see. And another one on the inside of the car, so you can see me as I drive onto the ferry.
Thank you, Kevin. Here we go. Wow. Right now, I'm driving over the link span, and ahead of me is the prow of the ferry. Ooh. And here's the deck officer.
Oh, it's a bit bumpy. Once I'm on the ferry, I stop.
Okay.
And now it's time for all the other cars to come aboard the garage deck. And when it's full, the hydraulic rams fill with oil and lift the garage deck up. The hydraulic rams keep pushing the deck up until we're at the top. Now it's time to get out of the car and go to the passenger deck, where we can enjoy the views.
Did you hear that sound? That sound? That was the ferry's horn.
The horns mean we're moving out of the
can drive over the link span onto the island.
Wasn't our trip on the ferry fun?
I loved finding out how a car ferry works. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember the name of the platform that takes the vehicles from the land onto the ferry? That's right, it's called a link span. Did you hear the sound of the horn when we were leaving the port? And did you see on my special cameras as I drove onto the ferry and got lifted up on the carriage deck?
Ferries and boats help to transport cars and people across oceans, seas and rivers. On planet Earth, where we live, there are lots of really big seas and oceans, but there are also lots and lots of countries. Can you think of a way how we can see where all the other countries on Earth are? We could use this. It's called a globe. And look, we can see all the way around it. But how do all of the oceans, seas, rivers and countries get onto the globe in the right place? Do you know how a globe's made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
To find out how a globe is made, I've come to a globe maker's workshop. At this workshop, they make lots of different globes. Small globes, big globes, and globes that spin round and round. A globe is a model of planet Earth. At the top of the globe is the most northern part of the world.
We call it the geographical North Pole. And at the bottom of the globe is the geographical South Pole.
The globe has a line that goes around the middle, and that's called the equator. And the equator splits the world into the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere.
And two hemispheres make one sphere.
A sphere is a three-dimensional or 3D shape, and we call it that because there are three ways of measuring it.
The height is the distance from the top to the bottom. The circumference is the distance all the way around the middle. And the depth, that's the distance if we drill down from the surface of the Earth to the middle, deep inside.
To make a globe, flat pieces of map are joined together around a sphere. But how do they do it so neatly? Let's find out. This is the design area where each globe is designed, and Alyssa is a globe designer.
Alyssa's job is to design the flat sections of map that go on the globe.
Each section is called a gore, and each gore has a different part of planet Earth drawn on it. Can you hear that sound? That's the sound of the printer printing out the gores. The gores of the map are mostly printed in black and white. The colour is added later.
Next, the gores are cut out really carefully using a sharp knife. These 6 will make half our globe.
Once the gores have been cut out, they need to be painted. Alice uses watercolour paint for the gores. She mixes the watercolour paint with water to make it really thin so that we can still see the globe design through the paint. What do you think Alice is painting with blue watercolour paint?
That's right, it's water, like the seas and the oceans.
The gores are then left so the paint can dry, but they don't look much like a globe yet, do they? Next, we need one of these, a sphere. This sphere is made of a material called fiberglass, and fiberglass is lightweight and really strong.
That means fiberglass can be used to make lots of things, like surfboards, go-karts, and even helicopter blades.
This is Leo. It's his job to stick the gores onto the sphere.
First, Leo marks out some lines to make sure the gores go in the right spot. These are called latitudinal lines.
Leo matches up the latitudinal lines on the gauze with the latitudinal lines he's marked on the sphere.
Look, can you see him matching the lines up? That squiggly latitudinal line is the equator.
He sticks them in place using a little bit of glue and lots of water. Sticking the gauze onto a sphere is a really fiddly job. So I'm going to film Leo with one of my special cameras. This camera can film a time-lapse, which means I can film something that takes a really long time, but when we watch it back, it will happen quickly. Okay, the camera's recording.
Look, Leo's putting glue onto the sphere. Now he's taking a gauze out of the water and is sticking it onto the sphere. This means he can match up the latitudinal lines without the gauze sticking too quickly. Here's another gauze. And another. Starting to look much more like a globe, isn't it? Once Leo is finished, the mountains and rivers are painted onto the globe before a layer of varnish is added.
Varnish is clear and runny, but when it dries, it goes hard, so it protects the globe. A bit like an eggshell.
The globe is then attached to its stand.
And here we have a finished globe. Let's see if we can find where I am in the UK. Where am I? Here I am, the United Kingdom. If I spin the globe, here we find India. Even further down here is Australia. How amazing is that? I loved finding out how a globe is made. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember the name of the flat pieces of paper that are stuck onto the sphere? That's right, they're called gauze. Did you hear the sound that the printer made as it printed out the gauze? And did you see my special time-lapse camera filming the gauze being stuck onto the sphere?
So the next time you see a globe, you'll be able to point out different countries and oceans, and you'll know how it was made. And if you see a car ferry, you'll know exactly how it works to get cars across the sea. I'll see you next time.
There are lots of things all around us, exciting things. That's